I wouldn't be surprised if it was on that order of magnitude of 20, maybe 30% of appraisers today that don't end up embracing the new reporting format.
The initiatives being tackled right now are a 7-day test drive of the home for any Opendoor buyer. Is that OpenAI, the company, would use more than the United Kingdom's energy and ultimately would use more than India's energy in just under the United States.
Power cost of energy is certainly going to be a factor in affordability and in pricing of what you can afford to pay for your own home and for investment property.
Episode 60 of Market Moves with Mark and Jeff, two uninteresting guys talking about interesting times. Jeff, you have just come back from the Appraisal Summit in Las Vegas. Tell us a little bit about that. It's great to be with you today.
Good to be back with you, Mark, as always, and also good to be home. I talked to all these people that come in, for the Appraisal Summit and even the Valuation Expo that was earlier this year. I feel like I get away with something because it's a less than 2-hour drive from my house. I don't have to navigate airports and just deal with all of that rigmarole in travel. But always nice to be home. As a side note, I got home about 8 o'clock at night, and my 16-year-old daughter was sitting out on the deck reading or doing something. She saw me and came running in and excited to see me, and we played cards for a half hour before bed and stuff. It was just a lot better being home with her than catching a red-eye flight back home or something. So it was you have to appreciate those moments when your teenagers actually look forward to seeing you and enjoy you showing back up again.
Yeah, not seeing you and then going outside to read a book, actually putting the book down and coming inside at 16. Wow. Way to go.
I'm not sure exactly what it is. I'm doing something right, and I will take it, whatever it is. But yeah, as far as the conference itself, it's a good time. We just, through the COVID era, got used to doing everything online. And certainly there are efficient ways to connect. You and I are talking right now, not in the same room, although it would be, it's always more fun when we are. But, these conferences are a good opportunity to connect and just be together. I had a couple of roles there at the Appraisal Summit. One was helping to coordinate and kind of MC a trainee supervisor event that took place on Sunday afternoon. We had some really good people come in and talk about different careers and valuation that, trainees, their primary exposure to real estate appraisal is appraising houses for mortgages. Well, we had somebody from the International Assessors Association come and talk about career working for county assessment offices, different structure a little bit, but very similar to what they do. We had Pete Fontana from the State Harmonization Task Force come and talk about how they're basically trying to get that experience that assessors are accumulating to count towards full licenses in the various states. As you can imagine, almost every state handles those things differently from one to the next. And so, just interesting. And then we had some others talking about practicum and PAREA courses, ways to get the experience that way, to get in. So really valuable for trainees looking for a pathway into the profession. We did stream it and have a video recording of it, available for those that weren't able to be there on site. But, that event has kind of gained momentum and steam, and it's been fun to provide something that's just really valuable for people stuck at this phase of trying to find a supervisor and not sure what to do or what the best next step ought to be.
As with anything, it is a bumpy road, but the overall trajectory over the last 3 or 4 years of exposing the industry to people interested getting into it has gone from a walled garden run by those in the industry and their desire or lack of desire to train people and bring new folks in, to one much more open to folks coming in. And it's not always pretty. It's not just one positive step to the next. There are, you take a few steps forward, take a few back, and that sort of thing. But man, what progress has been made over the last half decade. It's really great to see, and I think speaks well of the future of the industry amidst a number of data points that concern people.
Yeah, 100%, Mark. And I made a comment, right along those lines when this supervisor trainee kind of pre-conference event first came online or was first conceived about all you could offer. And they asked me to come and speak at it 5 or 6 years ago, and about all there was to offer were tips to try to get in front of a supervisor and compel them to take you on, and what can I bring to the table, and all those sorts of things. Well, fast forward to today, and you've got, the Appraisal Institute's PREA program that's kind of a proven commodity. At least at some point, it's in the marketplace. People are certified or, using it or going through it and all of those sorts of things. We've got 2 now practicum courses that are available. There's just additional alternatives. And, those conversations with the trainees at the event, we're all around, well, I can't find a supervisor. Which of these other 2 is the best option for me? So it's fun to see that there are now alternative pathways to people coming in and getting the experience that, just the weren't options on the table just a few short years ago.
Kudos to those pioneers pushing these new alternatives forward. I won't even, other than the Appraisal Foundation, Appraisal Institute, I won't mention all of the names because I'll leave someone off, and I don't want to do that. But there are a lot of folks that are really pushing this forward, almost to the point, Jeff, where you have to remind everyone in these presentations that the traditional way is still available and not a bad way to go. And how far we've come from the only way available, also not very accessible, that only way available, finding a supervisor, to now you got to remind people that is one pathway to get in that's still available and maybe less advertised.
Yeah, exactly right. And a lot of people have just thrown in the towel. And we've worked with the Appraiser Now Development Initiative in the past and currently, and that's still their biggest bottleneck, is finding, a supervisor or a landing place for those that have come in and gone through the process. So, it's not totally, overcome, but there are a couple of good, options. I had an in-depth conversation with Julie, who's running the newest practicum course, and it's just fun to see the enthusiasm for sharing and spreading knowledge, and even the enthusiasm around the trainees looking to come into the program in the first place, or into the profession. I mean, it's just, they're excited. It's a new opportunity and experience for them. For some, it's a second career. For many that were there, it's kind of their first leap as to where they want to go, and so it becomes a little bit contagious, the excitement around coming into a profession that, you and I are over 2 decades into. And that renewed energy is always, encouraging and contagious.
Jeff, excuse me while I step on my soapbox for a second here, but, I think this has been one of the most important issues to me over, greater than 5 years. And, you and I have taken on this podcast at the jump here, really to try and broadcast an alternative to experience, which was PREA, in the first one out, which was the Appraisal Institute. And, so I spent a lot of time on those fronts, and I think they are out there enrolling, and I think the next focus for me in sort of the system that we have in building it into a better place for the next several decades is looking at now, well, why is the supervisor thing so darn difficult? And I think there are problems industry wide to solve that deal with that. It of course is not to get rid of the experience requirement, quite the contrary. It's just how to get access to experience. Well, the solutions are all workarounds to the supervisor thing, and they're good. It's kind of building academic curriculum and the like to go get experience. Great. There are some easy solutions to provide more accessible experience through the supervisor relationship. And it is through lenders allowing trainees to participate in the trainee or in the appraisal process. And we've got to solve that. I think it's a mission of you and I's. I think we've got a long ways to go. And really, on some level, the conversations are just starting. But we don't, there are too much, the vast majority of loans and appraisal orders out there do not let a trainee participate in the residential appraisal process. Generally not a directive from the GSEs. It is an overlay from the direct lender or the secondary investor or purchaser of those loans. And it really handcuffs what a potential supervisor is able to do from an economic incentive perspective. And we've got to solve that. I think that's the next area of focus for me, to really get this system right for the next group, our next generation that's coming in, is to get, just allow trainees to participate as they are allowed to do in every appraisal process, and as they are in USPAP, as they do traditionally on the commercial side. It's a kind of a silly overlay that I think was an overreaction to a problem 30 years ago that probably isn't much of a problem today, but we are still stuck with that regulation.
It's such a good point. Yeah, and really, it's going to take some effort, as you say. I think with this whole effort to, modernize appraising, at least from the mortgage, user's perspective, there has been some momentum, and it's been years and years that representatives from Fannie and Freddie have said, hey, we're okay with trainees not just tagging along and holding the supervisor's hand, but actually inspecting on their own, co-signing on the report, provided that they've, are meeting certifications in the reports and all of those sorts of things. And so they haven't been the reason that it's been so hard to do. It's like exactly as you said, it's investor overlays, it's other lender clients that, perceive a risk or a concern with having, somebody with the title of a trainee, which, as a side note, we had the chairman of the qualifications board there talking about kind of a reconsideration of, all of the qualifications. But one of the proposals that it sounds like are on the table is to rename this trainee title to an associate appraiser or something that isn't quite as demeaning, and frankly might be part of the reason that it's harder to get, investors and other users to be okay with this, because we just make it sound like they don't know what they're doing. It sounds like they need training wheels, to be allowed to do anything in the process. And early on, that's the case. The problem is you always have, somebody who will try to find a way to take advantage of a situation in an irresponsible way. But for most of us that are, investing in trying to help give people the best training experience they can, they've been doing it for a long time. There's no reason not to allow them to participate, within the confines of, what states require for trainee participation, all that sort of thing. But there's a lot more opportunity than is realized in the moment. I think you make a really good point.
Yeah, kudos to the lenders and investors that have allowed it for the last half decade, and have stuck to their guns, allowing it even in the face of low appraisal supply. I think a lot of people have looked at it, lenders have looked at it and said, well, you know what, I don't need to let them participate because there's more appraisers than I know what to do with for every order I have, so I just won't. In the end, that doesn't help us a lot, and I think it's fairly provable that having a trainee involved in the process does not add risk to the appraisal or the loan. So off soapbox, but there we are. Glad to have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So the only other maybe brief takeaway is, of course, a lot of the focus was, and I don't have queued to pull up, but maybe I should, our little meme of U80 3.6, I'm ready, or you. It's interesting, we're in this limited productions phase, and it's best I can tell from the conference, I don't think any of the software providers are certified by Fannie and Freddie to produce or receive a 3.6 report. Of course, there's a lot of focus on, bringing that to pass as quickly as possible. So it's coming, but with this modernization, or at least this new reporting format, there are going to be some improvements, I think for appraisers, a removal of the requirement to, for the appraiser drive by comparable cells and take a picture and risk your life in the process, probably a step in the right direction. But your soapbox issue isn't only yours. There were other appraisers. There was one that spoke up in the general session. I think it was a panel discussion with some chief appraisers from AMCs, where they were saying, the appraisers making the case that, hey, if we're okay with data collection, with third parties collecting data, why can't a trainee who's already, better trained on that kind of thing than other, non-appraisers, why can't they be the ones involved in inspecting and, providing information directly to their supervisor, where they've got a direct line of communication and, probably better communication with what's at the property versus this one, third party report, and there's no real interaction beyond that. So, I think there are a lot of people that would like to see that happen. So not just your soapbox, but I can respect that it is.
Jeff, I thought it would also be worthwhile before we move on from get the update from the Appraisal Summit is your barometer check on the likelihood of kind of the bombastic prediction that we might be losing some 20 or 30% of appraisers out there as a result of UAD 3.6.
Boy, it's really interesting. It was reiterated that Total, who is you kind of have the lion's share of appraiser usage for appraisal software, re-emphasized their statistic that less than 30% of appraisers today, right now, are using their mobile inspection app and technology in the field in doing inspections. And that's been, I think, one of the issues that could likely push people out of the profession. And I had a conversation with an appraiser that I know and respect and have served with in different capacities in the NAA, and she was saying, I don't think I want to make this 3.6 leap. I think I'm just going to focus on non-lending work that's not going to make me go there. Although in the same breath, she kind of acknowledged that, yeah, I've got a trainee who's going to have to learn it because that's where the future is going to be. But yeah, so anecdotally, I know there are those that aren't going to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was on that order of magnitude of 20, maybe 30% of appraisers today that don't end up, embracing the new reporting format and the paradigm with which you're going to have to operate, in that world. So yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we're still early enough where they're not actually delivering those reports just yet. I think when push comes to shove, many appraisers that don't want to do it but aren't ready to retire are going to go kind of kicking and screaming. But I think a lot that are looking for a reason to do something different, this is the reason served up on a silver platter for them.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think it's good to keep checking that and see where we go as we get closer. We probably need a few of these darn things getting delivered before we really start to have a handle of what if the rubber meets the road there with those predictions. But definitely something to watch. And if it does come to pass, boy, the conversations about accessibility to experience and getting through the trainee process, hopefully renamed to something other than trainee, would all of these things are going to be necessary here. So, yeah, Jeff, I mean, even the folks, I know there are a lot of appraisers that have been excited to make the transition from mortgage appraisal work to non-mortgage, working for attorneys, pre-listing, divorce, estate, all those sorts of things that are out there. It just occurs to me, we talked a little bit about this before, but the need for kind of a bedside manner in conducting that kind of work, that one of the things about the mortgage work that is nice for a lot of appraisers who are probably smarter than the average bear on average, that but maybe not liking to talk to folks as much or interact. You can work out of your bedroom, and a lot of times you can bring this work in and deliver it by hanging up a tile and not really having to market yourself much. And when you make those transitions there, that bedside manner is so important. And it reminds me or I'm reminded of that as I've been working through a family member this week who's been deep in the medical system in really difficult time, and in different ways. But you go through these moments that kind of we all have to go through, and it's sort of one of the hardest and most common moments that someone will have to go through in their life. And in buying your first home or your second or third, and you're going to buy it 3 times, is a different level, but similar in those real estate professionals that are there that really help you and really go out of your way or their way to care and to see you through. I think the parallels here, I'm very skeptical of the medical system, and in the last 3 weeks certainly don't remove any of that, but I have come across some medical professionals that are just angels, on no other way to say it, and very grateful for them. I'm kind of amazed that they're so good in differentiating at what they do and don't seem to ask for much different than what everybody else that does the same job and doesn't care and put in the same level of thought. So I've just really been touched by people in that way. And, I think it's just a reminder maybe to me, so I just say it out loud, that, that sort of conscientiousness, I think, in the real estate process is often overlooked, but really, really important in the right moments or the right avenues of having a career in this space.
That's such a good point. And at the end of the day, I mean, the service itself is very different between healthcare and, valuation service or anything related to real estate. But the similarity is you're serving someone. I mean, that is the product that you're bringing to the market. And it's so easy to just become calloused and you just do what you do. And, the people that you're working with are almost an impediment to the job you have to do in some way. And yet, when you're on the receiving end of any of these services, somebody who just goes out of their way to take care of you, in a way that isn't like the bare minimum, boy, you really appreciate that. It sounds like you've lived that a little bit. And I see those that really thrive in the appraisal business, serving non-lending clients or even, working with lenders. Loan officers just know, hey, if my borrower interacts with this appraiser, they're going to have a positive experience in terms of just somebody who's not rushed and willing to be professional and not just blow people off because you don't have to talk to them. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us. One of the areas that we focus on within our company is providing unexpected service, which means service that's outside of what you would just expect in the run-of-the-mill, interactions. And it's a high bar to achieve, but boy, it's sure worth it, and a good reminder when you're on the receiving end of a service somewhere.
Yeah, Jeff, and I think that segues a little to what I think for a little while might be a recurring theme on the podcast, at least if my curiosity has anything to do about it. And it's this sort of mission-driven message of Opendoor's new CEO, Kaz. At some point I'll hear how his last name is pronounced and then be able to do it, but I can't right now. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit here because I just continue to be intrigued. And I think any of these guys that are trying to do big things need to tie it to an importance and criticality of mission, and taking on something big and nearly impossible, I think on some level, for whatever reason. And, Opendoor sort of rejuvenation here in the moment is sort of capturing that. Let's see, and I sure hope it stays. But it's a bit of a media or social media frenzy these days, Jeff. And yeah, I'm intrigued by it because it's sort of the phoenix rising from the. I mean, it's just dormant. The stock, the company, the everything, right? Just sitting here in this interest rate thing, and then you've got some activist investors that come in and say, hey, I'm going to breathe a little life into this thing and see where we can go. And then you bring in the right CEO, which was after the decision to breathe some life into the thing. And then he breathes even more life. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. And there's a couple of newsworthy things. I think it's fun to watch because of this like ginned up excitement that has been created here sort of out of nothing on some level. In a few people believing in a story and painting that picture well. But also, Jeff, they have noted some kind of disruptive concepts that they're trying to roll out really quickly. I thought we'd talk about those for a second, because I think everybody listening to this podcast would agree that there are major pain points in buying and selling homes, right? Major pain points. And I think 30, 40, 50 years, we all just sit here and say, well, yeah, I mean, it's buying a home. So there's all these things you have to do because it's buying a home and it's so much money transitioning and title's got to be researched and on and on. And so I think everybody knows that these things exist. Nobody's really, or few are really trying to take them on one way or another. And so I think there are like three things. First, the return to office is just an interesting thing to note. We talked about a lot in the beginnings of this podcast, people coming back to work. So there is a requirement to come back. They are an in-office by default company. And then I think he's put in the job description of everybody that they are default, using AI in everything they do, every employee. And I thought that was notable, little catchy, I think, but curious to see how that plays out. But the initiatives being tackled right now are a 7-day test drive of the home for any Opendoor buyer. and a 100-day warranty. I'm guessing that is a home warranty. I can't tell fully. And then lastly is a assumable mortgage initiative, which, boy, that could create some transactions, I think. And it seems like they have a partnership with Rome that tries to facilitate this sort of thing. So, Jeff, that's a mouthful there. Curious as to any thoughts you have or observations on what's going on over there.
Yeah, boy, it's a lot of fun to see just the innovation and the creativity that they're trying to inject into the market. Saying, hey, things have always been done this way. Do they have to be? Why would they be? I think my biggest complaint is you weren't picking up on this before all of the frenzy so that we could have made another market move, stock call before it was obvious that things had really run up. So thanks for being late to the party on that. Yeah. But aside from your dereliction of duty on that end, the 7-day test drive is a very interesting concept. I thought about it a little bit. The 100-day warranty, I suspect that there may be something more to it than just a traditional home warranty. I mean, there's nothing real newsworthy or exciting about that. It's pretty common to get a 1-year, home warranty that warrants against certain defects in the property. I'd be curious to see how that ends up playing out, but certainly nobody out there is saying, hey, buy the home, live in it for a week, and then decide if you really like it or not. A couple of thoughts come to mind on that, Mark. I mean, one, if you're going to fully move in, I would guess that you're not going to have a very large percentage of people that say, yeah, never mind, I think I'm out, 7 days into it. It certainly helps, I would imagine, pull the trigger or get off the fence and actually move with the transaction if you're maybe a little bit concerned or uncertain. But I also wonder, well, that's interesting. So if you're going to buy a house and test drive it for 7 days, are they going to have a staging or a furnishing option? Yeah, I think you could have some kind of tangential businesses that maybe come out of that, or maybe that they roll into, that offering to make it custom. And I would imagine you'd have to really hate the neighbor's dog next door, or the train, rolling through your backyard, or whatever it is, to say, yeah, I'm going to move all my stuff in, and then 7 days later turn around and say, never mind, I'm going to move it all out. It's moving is the thing everybody hates in the process too. So will they bring some, creative innovations to, kind of narrow that challenge as well? I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but just thinking about the logistics of what does a 7-day test drive, give it back if you don't like it, really mean, and interesting for sure.
Yeah, the details there will matter a whole heck of a lot, won't they? And I think anybody should be pretty darn skeptical of the suggestion, but so much so that it is a eyeball getter because it is bold. And I think there is. I think this is about as close to a meme stock as there is. I saw someone comparing it as well as maybe not a meme stock, but a cult stock. And I'm not afraid of a cult stock necessarily, Jeff, but it's got to have a business model that you believe in. And it's. I think I was, for the show, just researching a few things for Kaz's post here, and on day one, he told his wife, it was a Monday that he started, I think, and he told his wife he'd probably be back home maybe Thursday, something like that, and she told him, no, you don't come home until you've figured out a way to get to break even. And I appreciated a wife that is really pushing the husband that way. But I do. Boy, Jeff, the stock has really run up a lot, and what do I know? But I'm sure as hell not buying it. I think I will watch it, and if I think staying curious is a good way to begin, and would expect that the frenzy would stop and there'd be a long way down before a long way up, if it's ever going that way. And I'm not convinced that it is. So, but nonetheless, I'm interested, and I think there is a role for them. I've got the Lennar co-CEO Stuart Miller saying that can't help but be inspired by the resurgence. They're a technology partner of Lennar that they rely on. So. There are people that find some use already. And I think, even the unlikelihood that the 100-day warranty or the 7-day money back sort of guarantee, even if they aren't used very much, there is a level of certainty that is resolved there, that was previously unresolved, that is, I think, pretty damn valuable to a lot of people in the marketplace.
I think it is, and don't read my comments as skepticism around it. It's just interesting to think about, what does that really bring to the market, and what else might it lead to in their creative and kind of innovative offerings to help make a very cumbersome, expensive, and not very enjoyable process that much better. I mean, I think a lot of people want to be those that are the success stories, the Amazon, the everything store. It continues to blow my mind, honestly, that increasingly I can find about anything I want and have it delivered to my house within about 2 days. Sometimes it's faster than that. Is Opendoor the Amazon that will break this code and really do it? I don't know. If they are, and if they do, then the meme stock pricing is probably a bargain by today's even in today's pricing. I don't know that they will. I'm not ready to call them a favorite of the Market Moves podcast just yet, but the idea that that they're trying to do something this innovative and bold in residential real estate is definitely worth being curious around and watching, like you say, if nothing more.
Yeah. Kaz, come on the podcast, reach 100 people. We'd love to have you here. So we'll see if we can make it happen, Jeff. Well, I don't know if I can simultaneously apologize to 32,000 people all at once, Jeff, but ADP payrolls were released this week, and I was pretty excited to see that 32,000 people lost their jobs. I'm sorry to say that, but I think we need to continue on a path of Powell seeing some weakness in jobs, and I think we got that this week. Maybe a little bit more data to follow. What do you think?
Yeah, in fact, in a journal article I was observing this morning, the expectation was for a gain of, I think it was on the order of 50,000 jobs. So this loss, it's in the wrong direction, and a negative 32,000. It really is a terrible place to be when somebody else's pain means that maybe there's a little bit of relief in sight, for those of us in the real estate space. Of course, you don't want people to have to lose jobs in order to, retain yours or have some hope that things are going to look better in the future. But unfortunately, that's kind of the way that it's been for quite a while, where bad economic news is good news for rates, and for those of us depending, hopeful for tailwinds that better rates can provide for us. So kind of sucks to see on the one hand, but on the other, the Fed meets again at the end of this month. The expectation is for another 0.25% cut. We'll see, if that happens and what data plays out in the meantime. But one of the reasons this ADP info was interesting is with the government shutdown as of yesterday from the date of this recording, which is October 2nd, there's some question around whether the BLS data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is going to come out tomorrow as scheduled. And so it's just how good and how up-to-date of information is the Fed going to have as they're trying to make decisions. This is certainly a data point that would say, yeah, we can move forward with a rate cut, because there's, maybe more softness in the labor market than most were anticipating.
Jeff, I think in our defense, it is loose and reckless federal government and Federal Reserve policies over the last really 2.5 decades now that have made us wish for this pain that's here. And it really does, I think this is said around war most often, that, one death is a tragedy, 10,000 is a statistic, something like that. And I think this is in that category here with the 32,000 jobs. But along the lines of the mission that Kaz is stating through the Opendoor resurgence, and what we're talking about here earlier with the need for the conscientiousness in the work that we do, all in the name of home ownership accessibility being a critical pillar in the United States economy and American dream. And it just is not accessible today. And we have to be cheering for that to be fixed. And lower interest rates get us there. Lower jobs get us lower interest rates. And so here we are cheering for bad news.
It's not a fun place to be, but it's, at the same time, I remember taking education classes 20 plus years ago and, still hearing the adage that, well, what real estate really needs is a good recession, because that's what led to lower interest rates, and then kind of a resurgence, at least in real estate transactions. And so this is not a new phenomenon by any stretch, but just the nature of a cyclical business that maybe runs a little bit counter cyclical to general economic news.
You bet. Well, Jeff, we have a slide to prepare on maybe our second to last topic for the show today. But you and I both found this really interesting. It is a chart comparing OpenAI's energy plan over the next 8 years, and that generally halfway through that exponential growth energy plan, halfway through, is that OpenAI, the company, would use more than the United Kingdom's energy, and ultimately would use more than India's energy in just under the United States. It is a sort of alarming graphic dealing with what we've talked about. It's in headlines all over, but the energy consumption that we're already in the middle of, and amazingly not paying for as a consumer. It is venture capitalists that are paying for this right now through the virtually free use of ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini and on and on. This is a real problem, and it has potential impacts on real estate writ large. So I thought it was worth bringing up here and discussing.
It really is interesting to see. So this projection says that, if it holds out by 2033, that just the company OpenAI would be consuming 250 gigawatts of power. Today's consumption in the entire country of India, which, by the way, is the most populated country in the world, is 233 gigawatts. So it's projected that OpenAI would surpass the largest country by population's energy use. As a side note, Mark, it does stand out to me. It's interesting that the United States power consumption is 488 gigawatts compared to India's 223. So, I mean, you compare the populations, and just the power consumption per individual in the United States is a multiple of that, which is in India. India is a developing country. I mean, it's not necessarily the same, type of economic use and that sort of thing. But, there have been those that have been identifying China's rate of bringing new electrical generation capacity online, which is way outpacing the United States. There's going to be a need for more power. And one of the expense inputs for real estate is electrical bill, whether it's me and my home, and how much is my power bill changing, month over month. In investment grade real estate, unless that's a complete pass through to a tenant, there are concerns. And even if it is a pass through to the tenant, if the tenant's expenses are going up, can they continue to pay the same underlying lease rate? It's interesting to see the projected growth. If all companies were to scale at this rate, all artificial intelligence, companies, you could potentially run into a real, problem if this trend held. I don't know if it will. I did listen to a podcast where David Freeberg was talking about a couple of white papers that were identifying a possibility of dramatically bringing down the power consumption per token output of artificial intelligence. That's not in practice. That's not happening. It's a paper saying, hey, we think this could work. So I don't know that necessarily moves the needle on this projection just yet. I think that companies like OpenAI at some level will be trying to optimize for energy efficiency. It always just blows me away when you think about, Mark, that artificial intelligence is compared to human intelligence at some level. And yet when you think about, and when we talked with Jim, he brought it up, I did 20 or 40 watts of power that the human mind consumes, on a kind of an equivalent basis, relative to these gigawatts of power that are used in artificial intelligence. I think there's a lot of room for optimization for energy efficiency, but over what time frame and what are the breakthroughs that will take to get it there remains to be seen, and they may be well into the future at this point.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think, some of it's been some time that we talked about, I think it's DeepSeek out of China, and I think some of the revelations that they're putting together, that they just don't have as many GPUs to get similar results. And so I think that, that's less energy consumption. And oh, by the way, China is expanding energy production like leaps and bounds above the United States and everybody else. And it seems like this administration is taking that pretty seriously. We've heard All In podcast talk a lot about the need to go hard in that. And I think, another way that this impacts in real estate, certainly impacts real estate as a homeowner, and energy bills or energy usage competing with these, mega venture capital funded firms. But and that goes into the commercial leases and pro formas and all to support, profitable loan or profitable ownership of real estate and the loans that support them. But, I think all of this generally means that the answer to should we, which energy sources should we tap into to create and produce energy? And the answer is clearly every one of them. And, major one as it relates to residential real estate is these darn solar panels on top of homes. I mean, China has been doing that aggressively for a long time. They make all the panels, it seems, and it's just exposed real estate that is relatively uncomplicated to set up. I think the price incentives aren't set right, but this is a major element of solving these problems. And you can kind of make financial sense if you're creative enough. So, they removed the government was a big beautiful bill, I think, removed the incentive to a homeowner to install this, but left the incentive of a commercial company to come onto your roof with your permission and install the solar panels. So I think it's another thing to watch here, because darn, we need the energy production, no doubt.
Yeah, 100%. I just looked at a house this morning in kind of an outlying area that had solar panels on the roof. What I don't see as often, but 2 big battery packs built right into the wall in the garage, and just, as I think about it, this outlying area, I think the power is maybe not as reliable as in kind of a downtown, area. So it gives you some insurance against, just the company not being able to provide power. But, in this thinking about power use by all of the players in the market, it insulates you a little bit from those, that are coming online and needing more power. So I think, the takeaway is you can generate a certain amount by putting those, by putting panels on your roof to help, ensure that you have access to power, even if there aren't the incentives, from a tax perspective that there were. There are other reasons, potentially to be looking at doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. As we record today, this morning, Tesla's kind of quarterly report was out, and the record car delivery got a lot of news, but I think probably less important for their mission these days. But one of the other ones was a record by 30% of their battery and energy storage product delivery. It's like over 12.5 gigawatt hours. And as you've got what a gigawatt means here in terms of how much a country needs one way or another, it's interesting. It's meaningful, and there's just a lot coming online to deal with all of this. So, its impact eventually on real estate, I think, is reliable. It will be impactful one way or another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like insurance and other factors that impact the costs that we've touched on or covered in the past, power cost of energy is certainly going to be a factor in affordability and in pricing of what you can afford to pay for your own home and for investment property.
You bet. Okay, very good, Jeff. Well, all we have left on the show note agenda today is that we're about at the halfway mark of you and I's Nostradamus style predictions. They're real estate predictions, of course, not who's going to win the Super Bowl. But you want to run through them real quick and see how we're doing so far. None of these bets are won because it is where they are on January 1st. So we'll, I think just an interesting check-in.
Yeah, I think so. I thought it'd be kind of fun to touch base. We set these out, I think, the beginning of July. We're now 3 months in, and we'll assess, how prophetic you and I turn out to be. So yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun to take a look at them. Our first one was the number of interest rate cuts from the Fed. You were projecting 3 rate cuts. I was hedging at 2. We've had 1 so far. We've got the anticipation is 2 more quarter point cuts. So I pains me to say that you're trending, better than I am. Maybe I need to start hoping for some good economic news to push that third cut into maybe the new year. But I'd say you're probably looking better on that one than I am.
Well, given that we are both predicting a 75 basis point drop, Jeff, they can easily make you the winner by putting in a 50 basis point cut in October or November and send me crying.
I think that's probably right. We'll see if that plays out or not. But yeah, that was kind of the over under was the 75 basis point cut or not. So that one I think it will fall one way or the other, but it's going to be pretty close.
Jeff, on while we're on rate cuts and Jerome Powell, all things Jerome Powell, it's kind of interesting to see how 3 months go by and the temperament has changed nationally one way or another. But it was enough of a topic where we opined on whether or not Jerome Powell as Fed chair would be in that seat by January 1. I said no. You said yes without a lot of conviction. But I think you are the leader in the clubhouse there, I think.
I think so. I mean, the criticism of him by Trump and others in the administration hasn't ceased, but it does feel like it's died down a little bit. They are kind of publicly talking about front runners and who they're going to look to nominate to replace him. I kind of thought at the time, and it seems like it might be the right line of thought, that it's probably less tumultuous to let it play its course and just have the successor known well in advance rather than force him out, with 3 or 4 months left in the term or something. So we'll see, but I'm feeling pretty good about that one, I think, Mark.
Yeah, looking good. Okay, well, we had mortgage rates below 6 or above 6 as of January 1. Rates were at 6.73 when we log these initial predictions. Rates today are 6.36, but darn, we got close to under 6 at 6.13 a few weeks back. Who do you think's the leader here right now?
You were saying under 6. I was saying over 6. I think it's going to be pretty darn close, honestly. I mean, we may get those 2 penciled in, Fed rate cuts. I don't know that automatically moves it under 6, though, with the way that the relationship has been. It's tight. I think it's really tight. I'm conflicted because I want to win, but I also would love to see a sub 6 interest rate. So I guess I'm a winner or a loser one way or the other.
Well, we just got 3 more. We can run through them quickly, but the S&P 500 was at 62.97. I suggested greater than 3%. You suggested that it would be up less than 3 or 3% or less. And it today is at 67.21. So it's up 7% right now since our recording. So I'm winning that one right now. A little bit afraid of a pullback to make this not winning by January 1, but that's where we are.
Yeah, it's looking better for you than me, I think, on that one, Mark. I mean, things can certainly move in a hurry, so I'm not throwing in the towel just yet, but I think I'd rather be sitting on your side of that bet.
Well, in the category of letting your winners ride, the market move stock play has been Fannie Mae. And it was at 9.51 when we logged our predictions. You said that it would be up over 10%, 90 cents by January 1. I said it would be roughly even. It's at 12.37 right now, so it's up over 30%. So you are definitely winning that one right now.
I'm feeling really good about that one. And unless there's some out of the blue announcement that really hurts that prospect, I just felt like as it gets closer to the likelihood of them being removed from conservatorship, that the stock price wasn't likely to give ground. And we'll see if that turns out to be the case. As a side note, they did have representatives from Fannie and Freddie at the Appraisal Summit speaking, and I bit my tongue. I was tempted to ask them when they thought that the administration was going to commingle them and send them out into the wild, and they wouldn't have appreciated that question while they were on stage. So I didn't ask it, but it did cross my mind.
Fair enough. Well, the last prediction is the median home price as defined by Redfin. It was $440,913 on June 27th, 2025. This is kind of an interesting one to check in on routinely, Jeff, because there's a lot of hyperbole, I think, around this. This is used to start a lot of articles and headlines, whichever way you want the article to go and whatever data points you select when you decide to write the article. But it is down $1,700 or 0.037% right now. You thought that it would be down less than 1% or equal to 1%. I guess less than or equal to 1%. I thought it would be even. It's like a very slight lean. We don't have much disparity between our predictions, I guess. But yeah, so time will tell here what happens in this seasonally slow season.
It's trending the right direction for me, Mark. I just need it to hold, and I will be where I want to be. I'm seeing in some markets where, as we write appraisal reports and are doing market analysis, I'm increasingly seeing a trend where there is a decreasing indication of where the market's heading. It's not dramatic in most cases, but I do think I'm probably even more convicted that it will be at least a 1%, softening, over that 6-month period on average. That's not in every market, of course, but I don't think I really see that trend reversing course unless, we look up and mortgage rates are well under 6%, come the end of the year.
Well, Jeff, I think for those listeners that make it to the end of these episodes, it'd be a lot of fun to see your predictions on home price up or down, interest rates, rate cuts, S&P 500, whether Powell's in the seat or not. Those things would be fun in the comments of the show. Please feel free to leave that. We'd look forward to engaging there. But Jeff, that'll do it for Market Moves, episode 60. Anything else for us today?
It's been a pleasure as always. I'd echo that, though. It'd be a lot of fun to see what you all think. So feel free to leave some messages. Tell us where we're wrong. If you want to outbid us on any of these predictions, would be a lot of fun for sure. But yeah, with that, until next time, Mark.
Very good. Take care.